Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi LiveEnoDing. In this episode, we're gonna take a look at the creations of a torus or a donut. So this was inspired by Saizip, and so let's get started. Basically, uh, Saizip on Twitter, he said that he made a donut or a torus, and all of them are procedural, and he just simply used. He simply used a single vertices and he used a bunch of modifier and everything is procedural and he can change the value and you can get a donut in the end. So let's see, this is a cube, right? If we go to edit mode and we just merge it to the center, we get a single vertices, right? Let's save it as modifier donuts. And oh, I actually already have it, so let's save it as SV Modifier Donut. And with a single vertices, so you can probably hardly see it there, but if you use modifier like Displace modifier, you can actually displace the single vertices. You can see out there, there's a single vertices there, because it's kind of pushing it in the direction of the normal. We're just gonna push it in the X direction. So now you can see the dots there, right? You can kind of control the dots. I'm kind of pushing it in X positive axis a little bit. And what I will do next is to use a screw modifier. This is where it gets quite interesting because screw modifier is kind of duplicating the points and is creating this edge simply based on that single vertices. And yeah, I think this is really cool. I didn't know that we can do this before, but this is actually kind of nice. And by doing that, you basically have a procedural circle. You can merge the vertices there, of course. And what else you can do? You can still open the angle, but it's gonna merge once it gets really close. And you can, if you do multiple iterations, you can get a quite nice result like that. Similar to what you can actually create using nodes-based framework like Sverchok or animation nodes. And you still have control, right, over this thing. What else can you do here? Step. Okay, change the step and then you can iterate further. You can do things like that, but don't worry about all that. Let's just go back to 360 and then increase the step, and then iterations should be just one time. And you know the saying that if you have like a circle and then you kind of rotate it in 360, you get a donut. So you can actually do that here. Let's do another displace, and instead of displacing it in all direction like that, we can kind of push it to the side again. Let's try y-axis, or actually x-axis is okay. Push it to the side, and after you do that, so you have displace and then screw. We're gonna do another screw modifier. So screw modifier, but we want to do it in the y-axis. So now you have basically a procedural donut. I found this really interesting. You can merge the vertices at the end. You can control the step and the screw here. Everything is actually still working, and this is actually really procedural. In the past, before I actually found out there is a node framework like Sverchok and animation nodes, I used to play a little bit with Blender Modifier, and only recently I found out that the modifier is actually quite powerful as well, of course. And of course, modifier is one way you can think of procedural way of creating things. You know, you see at this point we can still adjusting a lot a lot of stuff, you know, like controlling the torus. This one control the radius, of course. This one control the angle. It should be 360. The step of the donuts, and of course this control another radius of the torus, and this one can open up the torus. So the whole thing is procedural, and yeah, I actually find this quite interesting as well. I didn't know that this is possible, but thanks to Saizip on Twitter, I know now that we can actually do this. If you want to play around a little bit inside Sverchok, you can actually do a similar thing. So if you have like you already know that we have a torus, right? A torus, and then if we use a viewer draw, we can have this procedurally generated torus. You can control the radius very easily. Revolution is very similar, and this is of course one of the nodes that Sverchok can do. You can just bake it and you get a Torus donut, okay? But that's a torus. If you wanna make it from scratch, you can have start with a single vertices. So this single vertices vector, and then you use move. You're gonna move that single vertices, move it to the side in X, similar to what we are doing with this guy with a bunch of modifier. We're gonna do it inside Sverchok. So that's a single vertices, and I'm pushing it to the side. There's a single vertices there, and then I can rotate it. Rotate. Let's say in the what axis? In the Z axis, we want to rotate it how many times? Range, float. The angle is gonna be between 0 and 360, so this is gonna be plugged in there, so we can control the count. Of course, we already have a circle node here, so we don't need to actually do that, but we can do that if you want. And then the next thing you need to do is just to, you know, to push this again to the side, and then you just simply revolve it. So let's try. At this point, you probably want to use a UV connections, and then you get edges like that, circle with just the edges. That's the start, and then we can move it again to the side in X, right? And we want to rotate it once again. Rotate. Let's see if I'm doing this correctly. Range, float, rotate. We just duplicate this guy, plug this guy there. Hopefully this works. Okay, I realize this might not be the right things to do. So we have this guy right here. I think we can actually just rotate it. Let me think. That's the X, and we want to rotate it, but we should rotate it as like a single object. So maybe I need to mask join it. I don't know if I need to do this, but let's see. If I bake it out, we have just a circle, I believe, and okay, we can still control the number of points of the circle, and this should be a full circle. Oh, still open up over there, so I might need to close it somehow. Somewhere here I made a mistake, maybe. So this should close itself. Sometimes the best way is to actually doing it like this. So 360 step, and you close it manually right there, so you have a full circle. And now you want to rotate it, so you can do the same thing, same rotations over here. This is the rotation axis. It should be in the Y 0 1 0. Plug this. This is the angle, and so we have that. I believe I'm doing this correctly now. Almost there. And we just need to apply the mesh. And so this is vertices and edges and the matrices. And hopefully if we do this, we can get a torus. Okay, not exactly a torus, but we get a circle. And this guy right here, we want to be able to make it as procedural as possible. So let's use some math a little bit. 360 here and 360 20 12. So we need an integer. This should be 12, and this should be 360 divided by 12, so it's gonna be 30. So that's procedural. That's parametrically correct. Same thing here. This is 12, right? We plug it to the 12. 360 divided by 12, 30 degree, and plug it in here. So now we have control over that thing. Okay. So we are almost getting the torus, except that it's not a torus yet. I think if we use UV connection, this is gonna work. Yeah, maybe not exactly working yet. These edges, maybe we need to slice it somehow. But yeah, it gets a bit tricky sometimes, but you get the idea. We should be able to close it somehow. Maybe we can just use a cylinder, plug in the polygon there. But this is like a cheat, so I don't like doing this one, but this will probably work. So how many we have? 16 and 12. Should be 12. Here, subdivisions, and then you can close it up using a cylinder, and this guy should be cyclic. But yeah, a little bit more tricky, right, compared to this modifier one, but then again, the process is very similar. Maybe I did something a bit complicated somewhere here that can be simplified, but you get the idea. The whole thing really is a play with all this parametric. There's a little bit of math, a little bit of logic, but you start with a single vertices, right, with this guy, and then you kind of move it to the side, and then you use a screw modifier, you get a circle, and then you're doing the same thing to the circle, and you get a donut, the torus. And with Sverchok you can do the same thing. I guess this one definitely can be modified to be a better setup until you get a proper torus. Currently we get like this cylinder looking 3D primitive. I don't know what it is, but yeah, let's see. I think if I plug this into that guy, and then this one is 16. Let's use a little bit of math. Subdivision here, 16 minus 2, plug into this guy. So this is almost like a torus. Not exactly. I think I forgot something somewhere. Well, I guess it's okay, but at least you can see the whole process. It's probably, there must be a simpler method to get this to work, to get a donut. This is like how to make a donut using like a circle and screw kind of a process. The hard way to make a torus, but you already know we have a torus node and a torus node here that you can use. But you can see the whole things here can be simplified into a node. And thanks to Sverchok developer, we actually have nodes that actually generate a torus. And because of that, we can have a whole bunch of torus, and all of them can be procedural. And of course, you can do the same thing here, but then it's a little bit different, right? But the whole thing is very, very similar. I realize it's a, how can I explain it? It's a both way. If you like modifier a lot, you probably want to understand nodes at some point, and so you can do a lot more with nodes because you can go deep inside the components. And with modifier, there's a bit of limitations. It has its own strength as well. With the modifier, it's all like stacked. With the nodes, it's all like all these noodles, but they both kind of working together. If you can play with the nodes and then combine it with modifier, it's going to be really powerful. So yeah, give it a try. With this guy, of course, with an objects and a bunch of modifier, you can easily use animation nodes instancing, and then you kind of modify some of these attributes. So that's also kind of interesting. So you can use Blender drivers to do this, and you can use Python codes to just add a lot of randomizations. And yeah, it's a very interesting. You should give it a try and then see what you can come out with. So there you go. That's Blender modifier stack to create a donut, and Sverchok node tree to create something that's almost like a donut. Okay, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.